On the 6th of October last year, just a week before the budget, People Before Profit brought the first motion into this Dáil calling for price controls on energy and for the renationalisation of the energy supply sector to run it on a not-for-profit basis to protect people against a cost of living crisis that was at that point only in its infancy. At that stage, it was being warned that people may be facing increases of about €500 a year in energy costs. Needless to say, your government completely dismissed the proposals for price controls and for the renationalisation of the energy sector, dismissed them and voted against them, and ordinary families, working people, pensioners, people with disabilities, those on low and middle incomes have suffered the bitter fruits of your failure to support those measures 1 year ago. And since then, the crisis has got very, very much worse. We're not now looking at €500 a year increases. We are looking at energy costs doubling and trebling. Some estimates suggesting they're going to go from an average of €2,000 a year to €6,000. People are being crucified. These are hikes that are simply not affordable for huge numbers of people. And on Saturday the 24th of this month, at 2:30 Parnell Square, I would expect there will be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of very, very angry and very frightened workers, pensioners, students, people with disabilities, ordinary people appealing to you once again to take decisive measures to protect them against the cost of living crisis that is crucifying them, and indeed an ongoing housing crisis. Because you see, Taoiseach, it's very simple. Heating your home is not an optional extra. Having a shower and hot water is not an optional extra. Having an affordable roof over your head is not an optional extra. Having the money to pay your bills and put food on the table for your family are not optional extras, they are a necessity. And your government has to guarantee that those necessities, those needs of ordinary people and families and vulnerable people are met this year. And what the people will be marching for is energy price controls, controls on the price of food. They will be calling for controls on rent and to make housing affordable and to keep incomes, whether they're pensions or wages, in line with the inflation costs. And I would say, finally, it is long past time that we have to take the companies that are profiteering from this cost of living crisis back into public ownership. Nationalise the energy sector and run it on a not-for-profit basis, because heating and hot water and electricity are needs. They are not optional extras.
Thank you very much. Taoiseach, please.
First of all, the 2 points I would make to the Deputy. In the first instance, I note that you said the problem has got much worse, which I outlined earlier. What was striking from your presentation was you didn't elaborate as to why it has gotten much worse. It has gotten much worse because of Putin's war on Ukraine. And you seem incapable of articulating that in the context of this energy crisis, as do many on the left, for some strange reason. And the bottom line is Putin's war on Ukraine, his weaponisation of energy, is a major factor in the extraordinary price hikes that we're witnessing. But that said, we do have to intervene, and we will intervene, and we did intervene. Since you raised it 12 months ago, we did intervene. €2.5 billion cost of living measures were taken last year by this government, ranging right across the board in terms of dealing with the energy issue itself, in terms of the excise duty on petrol, diesel and green and so on. We reduced all of that last year. And we did also increase the fuel allowance, for example, by 55%. Massive increase last year. School transport fees, school meals programme extended, back-to-school clothing, footwear allowance, the student grant maintenance payments up by $200 a year, the holiday earning incomes disregard and so on for students. We did a whole range of measures, cut public transport by 20%, with an additional 50% cut in fares for young people, reduced VAT from 13.5% to 9% on gas and electricity bills until the end of October, gave a 200 energy credit to all households. The PSO was cut. The National Retrofitting Scheme with free energy upgrades for those at risk of energy poverty were initiated. We lowered the threshold for drug payment scheme to €80 per month, benefiting over 70,000 families. And we brought forward the working family payment budget increase announced on Budget Day. We abolished the inpatient charges for children and much, much more. Point is, we didn't stand still throughout last year. We did take measures. And prior to that, during COVID, we took extraordinary measures to protect workers and to protect the economy, which resulted in the fastest economic growth of any European member state since COVID, which gives us the resources to enable us to intervene again in a significant way Tuesday 2 weeks in respect of the budget and the cost of living package that we will be announcing. If we had taken your measure and spent billions on nationalising energy, we'd have very little left to allocate to anything right now. But we have a significant surplus, some of which we will use to alleviate the pressures on households and to protect jobs. And we will intervene because we do realise, of course, people are under extraordinary pressures. People are very worried and people are very concerned given these extraordinary price increases. And we are in a very dangerous moment globally with a major war on the continent of Europe that has created the worst humanitarian crisis in Europe since World War II, with millions of people displaced. Huge problems with energy because of it.
Thank you.
Huge problems with migration. And now food as well in other parts of the world. That's the scale of what we are dealing with. But we will intervene, Deputy.
Deputy Boyd Barrett.
Of course, the war in Ukraine has worsened the situation. But the war in Ukraine does not explain wind energy companies making super profits, even though their costs have not changed a bit. Or, as has been mentioned already, Corrib gas, or gas from the UK, where we get most of it, or Norway, does not explain the profiteering of these energy companies and the failure of your government and other governments. Although it is worth saying countries like Spain have introduced price controls. France capped the amount of increases that they could impose, but your government, before the Ukraine war started and at the infancy of this cost of living crisis, refused to impose price controls when you were asked to do in this Dáil with a motion that we put forward. Or to extend eligibility for the fuel allowance, or to take the energy sector back into public ownership. And people are suffering a terrible cost while those same energy companies increase. And by the way, just to conclude, Taoiseach, yes, the war has made the situation worse, but we have the highest utility costs almost anywhere in Europe. We have the highest childcare costs. We've seen the biggest increase in rent and house prices of anywhere in Europe. That is a specific government failure in this country, and alibis about what's happening internationally do not justify your failure to act and act comprehensively to defend people against this dire, dire crisis.
Thank you very much. Taoiseach.
We did act comprehensively to help people over the last 12 months. We did. And we will continue to do so, and we will intervene again to take people through this winter period, which is right through to the end of March. We have to help people. And we also have to protect jobs, just as we did during COVID. And whatever your views, of course, you'll never accept it. We did take the economy through COVID, and we did protect jobs during COVID. An unprecedented recession occurred in the first year of COVID. And because of unprecedented and innovative responses from government, we protected enterprises, we protected jobs, and we protected people's incomes, so much so that people were able to re-engage in the economy once the recovery started and our targets were exceeded. And we support measures to reduce those exorbitant revenues that companies are gaining, particularly the wind generators, but also fossil fuel generation as well. And that will be dealt with. And at the end of this month, 2 weeks' time, the European Union will make a decision on that, which I think is important. And we're going to follow that. We support that. and we support such measures that have been identified.
Thank
and in
you,
terms,
Taoiseach. Time is up.